Welcome to Building Resilience, the podcast where faith and leadership intersect to explore the true meaning of resilience. My name is Jose Pereira, and I am thrilled to launch this journey with you.
Welcome, everybody, again to my show, Building Resilience. I'm your host, Jose Pereira, and today we're going to be deep diving in the art, in the science of healing. And I have today a wonderful guest. And I was talking before the recording with her that this show, what we want to is showcase the human nature, why people do what they're doing today, because sometimes you see only the surface, but you don't see what is behind. Everybody has gone through adversities in their life. Sometimes we have hidden traumas, and sometimes we do things to heal. And the person that I'm having here, she talks about healing. So my guest today has walked through the fire and has embedded a powerful voice of transformation. Her name is Heather Ann Ferri. She's a speaker, she's an educator, she's a healer, and she's the author of The Sacred Sweetness, The Alchemy of Healing Sugar Addiction. Wow. Great topic. We're going to talk about that because I have been, to tell you the truth, sugar addicted in the past.
I won't tell anyone.
She helps individuals and organizations alchemize the trauma by blending creative art with the ancient science. Very interesting topic. Her work addresses everything from the AD to the CPTSD recovery. I was a PTSD victim, so I know what is that. Okay. Yeah. Her work addresses everything from the ADHD to the CPTSD recovery. I said her journey from survival, severe childhood abuse, and generational trauma. Great topic talking about generational trauma. We're going to stand that because this is something really powerful. To becoming a spiritual advisor, and it's truly remarkable. Without further ado, I'm going to give the mics to Heather. Thank you for being here, Heather. The mics are yours.
Oh, blessings. What would you like me to share first?
Well, I want that you introduce yourself first. Talk a little bit because I introduced that you have been gone through childhood abuse. You have suffered generational trauma, but now you're a healer. How was that process in your life?
So, yes, I was born in Pittsburgh, PA. My parents were high school sweethearts.
Okay.
And they married very young, and they both had a lot of generational trauma through their bloodlines without knowing it. This was, in the 70s when we didn't hear much about self-care.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't many options for mental health. And two of the pivotal moments in my childhood that I reference a lot in keynotes is when I was 7 years old, my father came home Christmas Eve. And he was really upset. He was depressed, confused, and he was sitting at the kitchen table with my mom explaining that he was being pressured into signing a contract he didn't understand from his father, from the family business. He just wanted to take it home and review. And my grandfather, apparently there was conflict, and he was fired. So he was fired from his father in the family business. And before that, I would say, from my perspective, my mother would have, sort of be upset a lot at him and sort of always say, I'm going to get a divorce. There was always this sort of like, you're not good enough type energy. And so obviously she didn't handle this situation very well. And from that moment, as a little girl, I was like, wow, is mom going to leave? And what's going to happen to me and my brother? And I was like, I have to be the perfect child. Like, I absolutely have to be perfect and not bother her so that we can keep the house in balance. So right there, I started creating the masks and started creating different personas to help the situation that a lot of children do. And so then she had a job for a moment in time, and that didn't make her happy. While my dad was medicated and depressed, and then he got a job and she was home again. And I was roughly around 8 years old.
Wow.
And my dad and my brother are away in the morning. My brother left for school, to a different school earlier than me. Um, and I would be sitting at the vanity desk getting ready like any little girl. And my mom would come in the morning every time, pretty much the same time, which there
Uh-huh.
is science to trauma in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
And she would take my hairbrush and start brushing aggressively. Then eventually the hairbrush would be thrown down. She would grab the back of my head, screaming horrific, horrible things to me, and then choking me almost to death.
And you remember clearly that moment, correct?
It took a long time to
Wow.
remember that because of the amnesia and brain damage, and also because as a child you're afraid, you want
Yeah.
to wrap it up.
Yeah.
So that was not a quick fix. Yeah, go ahead.
You're talking two topics that are very interesting: the generational trauma and the childhood trauma. And I'm gonna say here, and the people that are hearing me, because I talk about this, uh, and there is something that typically in the religion is not talked too much about this. But the pastor of my church, he talks about the epigenetic. The
Mm-hmm,
epigenetic is generational trauma. Is
mm-hmm.
that is something that and is something that is beyond the ADN or the is beyond the genetic is more something that people don't realize that you can come with traumas that come from your past that you don't know it.
Oh,
You don't
absolutely.
know, and maybe you're repeating patterns in your life and you don't know why you're repeating them. For example,
Absolutely.
people that are having in their family, everybody always got divorced. And you see that like it's normal, or everybody's alcoholic, or everybody is abusive. So these are patterns that you have to discover why, and you have to cut them. So this is something that I'm going to leave it there. The other thing
That
is
was
that
lovely. I love that. Thank you.
and there's something else. Now we're going to talk childhood trauma, because there's studies, scientific studies, that a person between the first year and the year 12, during those 12 years is where you develop your personality. So everything that happened in that time frame will mark your life forever, unless you decide to retrain your brain. Because this is the other side of the equation. That today, that the same science has discovered that we have plasticity in our brain.
Mhm.
So even those childhood trauma, you can reframe them. But you have to, it's not easy, but it's doable. So many people are not aware that many of the things that they're having today in their life can come or the generational trauma or the childhood trauma. And you don't know it until you discover it. I can tell you, in my particular case, I have been discovered patterns in my family in the past that now I'm trying to fix it, and things that happened in my childhood that I was not aware, because this is the other thing. I have a therapist, by the way. I always say this. And typically, when you have those childhood trauma, your brain tries to protect you. So it put it in the back, and you don't know that you have there until one day they can pop up. So tell me more about how you begin in your life with this process. How you begin to discover this, and how you discover that you could heal with this.
Yeah, I don't want to miss this thought though, and I'm going to go
Okay.
right to that. So my
Okay.
thought is when I became a trauma coach, which I didn't plan for 15 years, and started to the I call the divine mother. That's who I
Mm-hmm.
sort of work with, the woman who created Mother
Mm-hmm.
Earth,
Mm-hmm.
the planet. The divine mother brought in, not a coincidence, all these particular therapists, nurses, doctors, scientists as my clients, which I was shocked, because I was so insecure about sort of am I smart? Am I this or that? And sort of became a mad scientist. None of them thought that their health, mental health, or any other problems had to deal with trauma. And I started to see these patterns, and I'm thinking, why are we not diving deeper into this? We're starting to touch it right now, but what you've introduced so far is brilliant. How it got started for me was I was still living in New York City in my early 30s. I was not happy with show business anymore. Sort of Broadway was turning into more commercialism
So you were
and
in the Broadway
corporation.
scenes. You were in the
Yeah,
Broadway.
yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Well,
Don't
I
skip it.
worked, I worked as a choreographer, as a performer, singer, dancer, actress. But the real special moments in my keynotes, my website is the tap dancing career. Which I started tap dancing at age 3. My mom bought me those shoes, and I was actually very gifted immediately, which is a program from a past life. Where did those skills come from? And so the tap shoes were my only voice. So that's using a creative arts. Growing up, not allowed to really talk at home, I tap danced. So when I moved to New York City, I lived above a jazz club across from Columbus Circle.
Okay.
And every day I'd walk past these event signs in front of the club. And being a sugar addict, being OCD, being personality A, I was driven. I've got to get jobs. I've got to make it. I've got to, and didn't pay attention to anything, and PTSD makes that very, very short, you can't see outside the box. But one day, we could call it a miracle. I looked at the sign, and the sign was of the tap legend Jimmy Slide, and he was hosting an event every month in that club. And I did not watch television, but I saw these tap masters, specifically Black men, and was captivated by them. And so I was like, I have to go. And so that night, I went into the club, and back then, this is the 90s. Honestly, I was like the only white woman, I snuck into the back corner, hid for about 4 hours,
Wow.
and was mesmerized by particularly him, all of him, his smile, his auric field in the yogic world, his voice texture of warmth, depth, spirituality, his connection to the audience. I can now say he was healing them just by his presence, not even his amazing skill set. And I was just, another tap masters came up, and I just enjoyed myself. And then at the end of the night, what I knew best, hiding certain aspects of me, I was trying to duck out, and he jumped right in front of me. And I don't know how it started, but I said, it's an honor to meet you. And he said, wow, it's an honor to actually meet you. And we shook hands, which was the activation. I call it a soul activation. And he looked at me and said, are you a tap dancer? And I shyly looked down at the ground and kind of looked up, and I said, yes. And he said, well, bring your shoes to the next event.
Wow.
So I walked upstairs, closed the door, and I cried for hours. I wasn't allowed to cry growing up. I didn't cry, but I cried for hours. I didn't cry after that for many, many years. Okay. So there was a deep, I call it past life, spiritual connection to Jimmy Slide. And that's one of the beautiful moments that I can, share.
How long you stayed doing it?
Say that again?
How long you stayed doing it? How long?
Well, tap dancing for a good decade. I had a Guinness Book of World Records for turning on one foot in tap shoes 16 times, which takes a lot of discipline and balance. That's an actual skill set that incorporated some of the yoga that I was starting to study and the balance of the right left hemispheres of the brain. I did a lot of other shows. I was writing shows at the end of my career because I wanted to empower women. I wanted to show other sides like we're doing today. And I did a one-woman show off Broadway. And that was sort of like a calling of, I need to go home now. And I will also say my brother had 2 beautiful children who are angels. And the first niece was born, and she was very, very young. And hearing her voice on the phone opened my heart chakra to also go home. But went home to move back to Pittsburgh with the intention of cleaning and healing the trauma and abuse, but I had no idea what that entailed.
Wow. How was your turning point to do what you do today? What made you switch?
Oh, so when I got home
Mhm.
to Pittsburgh, and I was thrown right back into show business, even though I was confused about what I wanted to do. I thought yoga, Pilates center. A high school boy who I was best friends with, we held hands every day. I call him Miles in my book series coming up. He was a black boy, and we held hands and I just say that because back in that era, this was not as common. I'm not going to say there was tons of racial issues in our school, but there were underlying racial issues, and there were comments made to me by the teachers, and I was aware of that. But we held hands in between classes every day for many years. And I can look back now and say that was a big deal coming from the abuse side. I didn't let anybody touch me or my family or hug me. So there was something sacred about that. And we're going into this black thing, I think, for a reason, which I'll carry on in my maternal bloodline, because there's a mystery to that unfolds in the last couple of years of my life. But so I reconnected with him in Pittsburgh, and we dated for a moment in time. And he was in the criminal justice field, had done a lot of therapy and healing work. He had parted from his mother at the time, and he was much more grounded in that sense.
Mhm.
And there were issues that came up in our relationship, and through really deep love, sat me down and said, look, you got to heal this stuff. It's this stuff that's coming out isn't about me, and you need to heal it. And I think he waited just long enough for me to step into the healing field before we parted.
So
And
he was part of your transformation.
yeah, I don't know if I trusted him. He was one of the few people I trusted, so I wasn't going to necessarily, I wasn't a big fan of talk therapy because of my trust issues. Why am I going to talk to somebody when the doctor couldn't tell when growing up that I was over medicated and I looked like I had a massive stroke at age 9? Like, there was a lot of serious trust issues. And so it was a big deal. And then what happened after that is I woke up in the middle of the night and heard something saying Reiki energy. I didn't know what that was. I grew up blue collar. I didn't hear any of these words, shaman, healer, yogi, meditation. I didn't hear any of that. Which I think makes my story a bit practical for anybody to connect with, because I'm a practical healer, in a sense. So I went online, and immediately this woman came up from my area. She was a psychiatrist for 30 years at the time. She left her industry, went into Reiki energy work, and I talk about her in book 1, chapter 8. She's the only teacher I had in all the sciences. She initiated a lot. She's a lot older than me, still alive, beautiful soul. And there was a lot of powerful moments we both had together. We both had, I believe, had life-changing moments. And then from that period on, as I started to get sick, as the body started to tell the story, things were untangling, is when the Divine Mother started introducing sciences from my soul database, because we are souls. When we leave,
Correct.
our souls have a database, and it's important for you to clean it up.
Yeah.
And so for
We're like
me,
a computer. We're the CPU, and we have the database inside.
yes, absolutely. And that's where it began. Now, as far as healing others, didn't plan that either. That came through. I was already sort of a yogi meditation, and it came through a meditation that I should start a private practice in my apartment in one of the rooms. And so I did, and immediately I started getting calls.
Wow.
So it
Wow.
was set up. It was set up by the divine.
And I always say that Well, that's what life is because there are turning points in your life and it can come from anywhere. So that person that you're talking, he was like an angel that appeared in your life. That's because life brings us angels, no? Angels that in the moment you don't see them, but
Yes.
when you look back in the mirror, you can identify the angels in your life. So that was
Yeah,
an
it took
angel.
me a long time to realize he was that
But
for
you're
me.
clear right now that he was an angel.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's great.
And you know what's interesting is he was an angel to me, but he might have been a jerk to somebody else.
But the angels are like that.
And
Yeah.
that's what it is, you know what I
Yes.
mean? That's the way it is, you know, and it
Yeah.
deals with your soul, your contracts and your soul contracts and all that. So yeah.
So let's talk about the ancient healer. So and the sugar addiction too, so because I'm very interested in these two topics. Let's talk about the ancient healer. Tell me a
Okay.
little bit about it.
So, I didn't term that until recently. I really sort of tiptoed around healer
Mm,
and because there's a great responsibility. You don't want your ego involved. And for me, I will say I will always continue to self-learn and self-grow. It's very important. I'm human. And if there's another science or healing tool that I feel is important in the mix, and I think that's kind of what makes me unique because usually when we specialize in something, we specialize it and then we stop learning sometimes. We stop
mm,
growing and we think this is just it. And for me, that has not been the case. And I think that's why when people work with me, especially doctors, they're shocked at how much I know and the experience because it's organic and it's nonstop. I'm not stopping the process of learning. Um, so, in regards to these messages, I will say the first healing tool that came to me is connected to the Bible. I'm not a religious person, but in the sense of water, living water. And the messenger was some noted as Jesus, some noted as Yahshua. I call that gentleman Yahshua. Yahshua came through me first and started to say the water is bad. And this was many years ago. And so I started to get information, and it's been a long, long journey of water education. But what I will say is if our brain is mostly water, why aren't mental health therapists studying quality of water? Why don't they understand ORP or HPH or any of these properties? So there's a water ebook people can pick up and ask me questions. That's probably a 5-hour lecture, but the bottom line is water, specifically electrolyzed reduced water, which has a ton of PubMed research, has been a game changer for me and my clients in brain injury
wow.
and recovery and in crying, because when you're frozen and you're taught not to cry, and then you have, think of it, I mean, we've got plastics in our water. I mean, this isn't, I mean, it's coming mainstream. We've got, antibiotics in our water. We've got forever chemicals in our water. I mean, the list goes on. So you're consuming that. You've got parasites actually in your water, and 3 of them, which if one
So you say
cuts
that
into
in a
the,
bottle of water like this can
yeah, I
come.
would recommend you go on my website and download my free water book. And I'd
Wow,
be happy to
wow,
ask any questions.
wow.
Because you being a leader, yeah, that would be very helpful and anti-aging and having worked in senior care as well as Alzheimer's and dementia with brain work. So yeah, yeah, water's a big deal. And we think water's water. Um, and we need to stop that programming and we need to pay attention. I'm actually at a point where I would love to attract more leaders in as far as legislation and regulation in regards to a lot of things with that, but that's a long other story. But so
Wow.
water is a big deal. I have an ebook and I would suggest reading it. It's not a sales pitch. It's some of my story, pictures before and after. I mean, you can see it. I have a completely different face now. You know, my skin is different. I'm not inflamed. My hair is healthy again. It's pertinent because if you're showering under chlorine that's going into the pineal and pituitary, even a shower filter, proper one, qualified and certified and tested by third party studies is what I'm about. Some people call me an Aaron Brockovich, and I take that as a compliment.
I'm hearing you, and I was thinking in the movie.
Yeah,
I
I've
was thinking in
experienced.
the movie. I
Yep.
was thinking in the movie, to tell you the truth. And let me tell you something. I live in Houston, in Texas, and one of the big issues here in this area that the water has a lot of heavy metals in the
Yes.
water, and well, and it's true. You're washing and you're showering, and all those metals are going inside your skin. So
And it's such an easy fix. It can really help people get to the next step. I can't say enough, and especially for businesses, this is like a tax write-off. So this is like a no-brainer. You know what I mean? Like this is something that we need to be moving forward in. I think the problem is that doctors and plumbers are not educated in the field.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that usually should be the messengers in that lane. And we need to change that. So if you're one of those game changers listening to this now, reach out to me and I will share with you if they do.
Where they can find your book that talks about that? You have it in Amazon?
It's on the first page of my website, which is my name, Heather Ann Ferri. You go down the bottom, you put your email in, and it literally comes up right away.
Okay.
Right away to read. And, I do free consultation questions, but you really need to understand what you're buying.
Oh, wow.
That's key.
Okay. Well, the audience that hearing this, please take care of the water and go and download their book because it's a big deal. Wow. Let me tell you.
I didn't expect to do that today.
No, but it's surprising. Really. Well, as you said, it's a no-brainer. If changing the water can heal your body, why not doing it?
Yeah, when you talk about sugar in childhood, my father worked for the water pipes, so I listened to him complain. Nobody took him seriously. So this is a generational healing too with water and all that. And when my father passed in 2022, he said, you got to lead with the water, So a lot of men in my city of Pittsburgh did not take me seriously. Women, mothers, healers, all purchasing. But a lot of the male leaders have not taken this seriously yet. So I send that message out. I'm open for conversation. You can disagree, but disagree with facts. That's all I ask.
Correct.
That's all I ask.
Correct.
Because I don't want to say it saves lives, but it does. And it definitely upgraded my life in dramatic ways. So that was the first one. Now, back then, I'm going on Yahshua. I'm going on Voice. I really broke and ended up praying, should I purchase this? Because there's two parts. There's a filter and then there's a medical device from Japan. And it was expensive, the medical device. And I got yes. And thank you that I listened to that. Best investment I've ever made in my life, to be honest with you. 15 years later, still have it. Have many, many more amazing healing stories. One with rashes when I pulled up an ancestor and I had tons of rashes, took pictures. That's going to come out later this year. Quickly healing those rashes through these waters. Water used to actually be healing in the United States. We think you have to go to some foreign land. We've been lied to about that. In Pennsylvania, there's documentation that I talk about in book 2 about healing waters and how the Indians were invaded and how the foreigners took that water. This is documented, bottled it with glasses in the 1700s and sold it to the people.
Wow.
So we used to have in PA healing medical grade water that's documented. I voiced this to many healers here. Nobody seems to be holding on to the fact that we need to address this issue.
And where is the water today? Is it extinct?
It doesn't, the waterfall is very little, and the healing properties are gone.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Isn't that sad?
Wow, of course.
And I found the documentation kind of like Aaron Brockovich.
Wow.
Maybe we'll make a movie out of it. Maybe there's another.
Well, let me tell you, I was thinking of that could be a great movie.
I know that Mr. Rogers, who I sometimes listen to on the angelic side, would love that. Let's talk
about the sugar. So what about the sugar?
When my mom would attack me, I'd sort of just get myself together again, walk down the stairs to leave as quickly as possible. But when I would look into the kitchen, she would be eating chocolate cake. She was a high sugar addict, and we all really ate a lot of sugar. And I became a sugar addict. And so it wasn't something that I was aware of, that sugar wasn't, you could be addicted to sugar. It was really when I started to do the energy healing work with my energy teacher, I started to realize, because I couldn't use my voice to my family, that when I felt shut down by the male energy in my household, family system, I would buy a pie and eat half of it in a setting. And that wouldn't do anything. And so I go through that, and basically the book you're illustrating, it's an ebook that I'm going to make into a Kindle, but people can email me and get it for free now on this, but I am going to sell it. So if you listen and you want to read it, it's deep. It's probably worth about 10 therapy sessions. It's got questions, it's got call to action, but it's deep. And it's not until the last year that I really understood the generational trauma with sugar in my mom's maternal bloodline. My maternal grandmother actually had a darker skin color that we just never really thought about, and really lived a very severe repressed life in low income. And I was very close to her at the end of her life. There's a chapter in book 1 on her, and she prophesized some things to me.
Wow.
And she passed away. She was the only family member that held my pen and started to see the generational trauma with me and my mom. And then when I started in the last couple of years, when my dad passed away, realizing, okay, her mother died at childbirth. There was no father in sight. Her older sister raised her. And then I started to get information through images of Black women. And I peeled 2 in particular. And one, and I will notate them at a later date with a soul tribe member with that. I feel it needs to be from a soul tribe member first. But they're pretty significant lives, and I want to set the record straight. But that explained to me the psychopathic attacking, because those Black women were enslaved, trafficked and stolen, brutally raped, tortured. Well, one of them was torture. The other one was empowerment. So I have a lot to say about that, and it would explain then what you said in the beginning, because you're brilliant. This is brilliant. Where did that programming come from with my mom, which I always questioned? Where did that switch? That came from somewhere, and it came from the predators.
Wow.
Who inflicted the Black women in the maternal bloodline.
Wow. What a heavy story. Wow.
It's heavy.
Ooh, wow. Ooh.
Let's go to a lighter note.
Oh, yeah, because you were talking and it's really heavy. Well, that is what it is. Let's talk about that you integrate creative arts in your healing programs. Talk a little bit about
because trauma can get heavy, like you just said. It can get really heavy. And having the creative arts in my being, I think inspires others to not only dive into the pain, but also know that you got to find your creative arts within you to evolve in joy. So for instance, when you're chanting vowels for brain protocols, so they're not words that help rewiring, people start to sing. They start to learn to sing, and they're singing in the car now. And I encourage them to sing without anybody else, to make up their own song. I'll have them write 3 affirmations and start making up your own melodies.
Well, even the religion, for example, in the Christian church, you do worship. And the worship is basically that. You are praising, you're worshiping, you're singing, you're expanding your soul. And all the religion really have something related to that, because in the Buddhism they do it, in the Islamic they do it. So all the religion really, that singing and the music has to be part of the process. So now you integrate that in part of your program. So you use, because I'm making you the question because I told you that I saw your YouTube videos. So you were dancing, and I said, "Ah, this is cool." But really behind that, you are taking out the trauma. You're trying to, to take out everything. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I switched over from having people on table and doing energy work and taking out darkness, because they would go home and not change anything in their lives. That became a Band-Aid. So what I do, my energy is healing, and people start to upgrade in my presence. I want people to become their own healers. So I'm teaching them protocols to remember things. I'm teaching them to write. I'm empowering them through these tools. Now, they may love to sing, they may love to dance, they may love to write, they may love to martial arts, but we're going to tap into something creative to keep them going, of course. And you have to know those moments where you go too deep and they need a break to get them to the next level. This is the mastery in it. If you pull too much trauma out too quickly and they can't handle it, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? So there's a dance to that formula, but part of it is that it's really their work. If they're going to do the homework, they have homework. They have a notebook, if not, I don't know, and so, because we want to I think we're in a time period right now to empower souls to become saints again and healers again in society. They have to do what I've done. We can't just have miracle healings that existed and do exist. There's a karma, though. So if you've done a lot of evil, I'm not sure you're going to get that, because it's not going to empower you to evolve. So we need to start to understand more. And I know a lot of energy healers agree with me. They've transitioned that career into more of health coach, life coach, helping people understand when you take a bath or shower, there's a whole ritual around. This is your skin, Do you touch it with love? Do you even think about that idea? Those ideas again, we got to get back to those roots. So, does that make sense?
Of course. Let me tell you, when I'm hearing you, if you every day in the morning, the first thing that you do is express gratitude, that it immediately change everything. So when you do that, you are in the process of heal yourself, because expressing gratitude for anything, for the life, for be breathing, for having a good day, for whatever is happening, even if you're going to in a bad moment, try to express gratitude. I know that it's difficult, but you can do that.
I was just going to say, beautiful thing, but there were moments where I was in so much pain. And if you're out there and you're that person, where when I would put my foot on the floor and stand up, I knew I was going to feel excruciating pain that people should not have to experience. what I had to do was necessarily positive thinking. That wasn't going to work for me at that point. I had to tell myself, this is just my perspective. I told myself, I'm going to win over evil. I am going to be my angelic warrior, but I can't avoid this pain. I got to shake it out. I got to cry it out. I got to write it out. So if you're in that lane, I've been there a lot. I'm now in his lane, but I really wasn't there for a long time.
But you know, you're talking about transforming the pain in a purpose, and that is exactly what people sometimes don't get it. And you have to try to talk from the scars and not from the wounds, because you have wounds. Everybody has wounds. Everybody has their own valley, and you have wounds, and the people normally talk from the wounds, from the pain, but you have to talk it from the scars, because that when you have the scars, what is represented that you went through the battle, they should not hurt. They are there. They only represent that you went to the battle. So that in that
Well,
moment is
I want to kind of, it does hurt. Swelling the brain hurts. When your brain is swollen, it hurts. So I want to really be practical about that, because I've
okay.
been in it and I've experienced a lot of it.
Okay.
I don't want to subscribe to, I appreciate your psychology. We're going to agree to disagree, but there is pain that's pain, and we have to have reality, because we need to be realistic about predators. And we need to be educating our public, our children, our women about predators. And so there is a debt when you do harm to somebody. That is just that.
And
For those of you who
how you prevent it and how you correct it. So what
absolutely. Well, correcting and healing an abuser is actually very different wiring, because I've worked with predators than victims.
Oh, wow.
And that definition is iffy depending on your soul database. You could be a victim in this life, but a predator through your lineage. So it's a complicated issue. It's not black, white. It's not. So I don't go there, because it is extremely complicated. And I'm not going to say I know it all. I just know from what I have gone through, and my clients for 15 years have gone through and examined. But I will say this, if you're waking up with pain, get to somebody, and maybe it's outside the box. Get to a spiritual advisor, get to a healer, get to an alternative mental health clinic, get to, get
because
somewhere.
the traditional clinic will not help in this. And I'm going to be honest. Many people go to traditional doctors and a lot of pills, a bunch of pills, and so you are intoxicating, having 8-10 pills per day. So this is really.
Can I say one more thing? I want to say one very good comment. I have been blessed recently to be on a lot of podcasts where the hosts are mental health therapists. And what I will say about this is there's a movement of a divide. Part of the education in mental health right now is just analytical, and it has to change. We have to train them to have all these other sciences, because if you're sitting across from analytical, that does not heal trauma in the body. And if you're sitting across from analytical, that person could be projecting their psychology onto you or their belief system onto you, as opposed to you healing and finding your own way. I never impose what I believe spiritually onto other people. People have experiences with Yahshua, people have experiences with Buddha, that's their journey, not mine. The other thing about the mental health therapists that that I support are the ones studying off of us. They're realizing now, oh no, we need to understand energy. We need to understand other science, because science is a controversial subject in America, and it's going to be for the next year and a half as things unravel. But you know, what PubMed, what experiences can I get? I always say, for me, the brain protocols, 3 months max, and you should be good to go with OCD, PTSD, childhood trauma, ADHD. So if you're doing a module in mental health for years and you're not seeing the results, just change. Decide to do something different. That's all.
Yeah. So
Be open to change.
you work today with schools and business and organizations. So this is the type of technique you use in the school?
It depends on what's going on. So
Okay.
with schools, I've gone in to help with violence, specifically disabled schools where the aides were being hit, with children in wheelchairs. And what I would do is go in and assess some things. And believe it or not, sound music was the biggest issue. They were playing hip hop, which can be very violent and aggressive depending on what you're playing. And that's why the children were acting out. Also, so I would have them play really calm, healing music to and from when the kids were coming, and then work with the staff on some meditations to calm them down. Because once they're getting hit, the staff's getting hit, they're now in trauma mode. And the child feels that even though they can't verbalize it. So school situations, a lot of times violence. And in businesses and organizations, it just depends on what they're looking for. Better communication, decrease in, sicknesses. And basically I could do like a very surface medical meditation program, but I find that the PTSD brain protocol is amazing for staff to sleep better, to start showing up with more positivity, morale, and then they also feel supported by their boss. I do work with leaders. It's nice to work with like a leader of a CEO before they hire me in, so they get a little example of what they're hiring in. But that's not always, you don't always get that. Water, change kitchens and employees,
Oh, the water
and
is a big deal. I can tell you, big deal.
you'll get a lot more activity.
I really, really, for me, was a pleasant surprise. And in your book, The Sacred Sweetness, you talk about the connection between the sugar addiction and the emotional and the spiritual healing. So how is that connection? Because you're blowing my mind, by the way.
Oh, thank you. That's a blessing. Thank you so much. So my mom didn't express, like, we didn't have an outlet at home. Obviously, the only thing my mom expressed was anger and rage all the time and blaming outside of herself. She didn't look inside at the mirror. And my dad, silence. So they were yin yang, which is an interesting toolkit for me because I understand the yin yang now. But I would say, so I didn't grow up connecting to my emotions. I was frozen. That took a lot of time. It took a lot of time with the crying and the healing and stuff. So sugar is a lot of times used when people really don't realize it to numb out. It affects the frontal cortex of the brain, which is your memories, to numb out. And the deeper question is why. And, some people, it's an easy question to answer, and some people, it takes a little bit of time. But one thing about our emotions is they start to get stored and they form cancers and acidity in the body. And so this is why the water flushes that out and it starts to get you go inside of yourself. But with a emotion for sugar, so for me, it was really to become comfortable with myself in silence and ask myself questions. And that's why the book series coming out later is a manual too, after each chapter, because I ask you questions and give you meditations so that you can either work with your coach or become a higher evolved scientist of yourself, or healer of yourself. Does that help at all? I'm not sure.
Of course. So for the listeners that are hearing this, that because you mentioned that if somebody's going through something, try something different. So what would be your recommendation that somebody that is hearing this, that they're trying to heal, but they're stuck? What will be the steps that they have to do to change their situation? What will be your recommendation?
The truth is, it's like, go back to that complex. No two people are alike. They really aren't. It really is interesting. But I go back to the foundation that I always introduce to every client, and that begins with water. So maybe read the ebook, see if that's similar. Most people don't drink water, don't like water, don't like the taste. They don't crave it anymore. There's a reason for that. I call it my magic water. I love it. It nourishes me, it feeds me, so I don't actually have to eat as much, because when you're hungry all the time, your body's craving minerals it's missing, nutrients it's missing, which could be missing in your foods, because we have food issues too in America with the soil. But
Oh,
that's a whole other topic. But
oh
yeah,
no. Yeah.
so maybe that, and doing something different, breathing, take a breathing class. Learn how to deep breathe, game changer. I not only teach one nostril breathing, but I teach the client to understand the psychology behind opening up the left nostril. So if you're sitting here and you're deep breathing deep and long through the left nostril, you're relaxing fight flight. You're going to sleep a little bit better, maybe deeper, but you're also training the body to stay relaxed. So when you're testing it out, every day and it's tight or short, did something trigger you at work? Are you running away from something? I was a workaholic, so I get that workaholism, running,
Hello, I'm here. I'm here. I was
That's
too.
me.
That's me.
And so just doing 15 minutes every morning of breath work not only is going to help your health and your immune system, but it's going to start to get you to go inside yourself. That's what we want. We want you to love yourself more.
Of course. So talk about your books, because you had the book series and there's some music there coming soon too. So how this tied this project in your mission? So what that with the people expect with this new project coming? Your book and the music.
Yeah, thank you. Over a decade ago, I was told through the Divine Mother to write my story out. And I did, even though I had severe brain damage. My grammar was awful. It took forever to write this book. So if you're the person that I have trouble reading, but I've been there, I understand. I published it with actually Christian Faith Publishing in 2018. And it's interesting because I'm not religious. And I said, they came on my feed and they were like, we don't care. We want to read your story.
Maybe that had to be your next move. I'm hearing you.
Yeah. No, it's not, but it's all good. It's all good. I love you. It's all good.
It's come here.
No.
It's calling you.
There's more for that later, but there's a lot deeper journey for that later. But what happened is I was afraid to share it with the public for for my family, my mom to go against me and all that. There was a lot of shame still, but the right people found it, and those people became clients. And that was the purpose of that particular book. It wasn't supposed to be worldwide, and it had a specific purpose. I want you to keep that in mind, because sometimes we think, oh, if I don't have 5 million likes, I'm not doing something right. That's not correct.
Yes.
You're not spiritual then. You don't understand how this works.
Yeah.
When my father passed away in 2022, which is in book 2, it's a pretty deep experience that I write about. I started to hear him, and he said, take the book off the shelf. And so I did. And then I started to go through a lot of deep healing, which became bloodline generational. I started to part from a lot of people, isolate again, because we have to do that. And when I was called to start, I wrote book 1 with my dad on the other side. We picked specific chapters to rewrite from a point of view of a healed child. And he wanted a manual after each chapter so that you, the everyday person or the healer, shaman, could use these spiritual questions, medical meditations to start introducing a toolkit. So book 1 deals with self-development. Book 2 deals with work development.
Okay.
And book 3 deals with love development. Because obviously, my parents' marriage, and then I have not been married yet. And the self-love coming into that completion is very important, but I believe in the union of marriage.
Wow, well, very profound.
And the songs, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
The songs are actually a bigger deal because I didn't like my voice for many years because it was different, actually. It was constricted and tight. But while I was teaching clients privately on Zoom and yoga classes, people would ask for a CD. They said, your voice is calming. I really want to, And then I sang to my dad the last 15 days of his life. And my mom, they had a healing. And that initiated me. So I've written 8 songs that are around my ancestors. One song is about him and a little bit my mom. And that is healing the women in my maternal bloodline who had no voice, and some of them were actually chained and were not allowed to have a voice. And I obviously didn't have a voice for many, 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 many years. And it's just in the last couple months, I've been told to come online and start to speak on podcasts like yourself.
Wow, incredible. So if you could leave to the audience a piece of wisdom about your resilience, your healing, what it will be?
So for me, I was never drawn to the superheroes in movies like a lot of people were. Like my brother was really drawn to
I'm a Superman fan, for example.
Superman, super this and that. When I was going through some of those painful moments, it occurred to me that I could create a superhero within myself. And so I started to sort of think about that idea of how I could be, my own hero, in that sense. And so I feel like we do live, especially in America, in a culture where people are on their phones and computers staring at celebrities, athletes, social media all day long, outside themselves. The only way you're going to be able to resiliently heal is if you go inside.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. Well, we're coming to the end, and I'm going to give you the last minute to say anything that you want to talk about, your business, what you do, where the people can find you. So this is the minute pitch. So the mic are you.
Thanks so much. Best place to find me is my personal website, Heather Ann Ferri, but my email, youmatter, youmatter 108, youmatter108@gmail.com. If you're looking for a professional speaker, if you're looking for Zoom coaching, or you're an alternative health person who wants to train and implement that into your facilities, leaders who are needing maybe some personal coaching a little bit or spiritual advisor, reach out to me. I'd love to begin that conversation. And I want to just send blessings to this channel, you and the people who have listened. By using my voice today, you have helped me heal my bloodline. Thank you.
Well, we're coming to the end. This is an incredible show. Wow, I've taken the water. I'm gonna go immediately to your webpage to download that. And well, this was a great show. And well, the people they want to connect, I'm gonna put her link there. And well, this was a wonderful show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
If you're a leader, you need to hear this. Great leadership isn't about having followers. It's about making more leaders. The real measure of leadership isn't about power or position. It's about impact and influence. The best leaders uplift, mentor, and empower others to reach their full potential.